Hey guys, welcome back to More English with Dry. Today I'm going to start looking at Stave 2 of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I'm going to give you a close reading and analysis of the scene in which Scrooge is broken up with by his fiance Belle shortly after he has been an apprentice with Fezziwig. The scene is the final one that Scrooge is shown from his own past, and it is the one in which Belle, a fiancée of his, decides that he has become too interested in money for them to proceed in their relationship. We are told to begin with that he is older now, and in the prime of his life. It is the final moment at which he is in some way linked with the young carefree man that we meet in the beginning of his past. It is just before he begins to make a real success of himself in business and become the tyrant or the giant of industry and commerce that we see in the present day. As Dickens alludes to, this is a time in which he may also have expected to be married and expected to be beginning a family, in the sense that it is the prime of his life. The description of him talks about how he is suddenly beginning to show care and avarice in his face. Much like Dorian Gray in Oscar Wilde's famous novel, his face is beginning to show the moral bankruptcy that he is showing as part of his character. The innocence of his young apprentice days have left him. He is now showing the stress of living as an adult in this world that is increasingly unkind to people, and also the physical symptoms of greed, this kind of restless eye that we talk about, restless in the sense that he can never gain a moment's peace from his thinking and his machinations to get more money. Undoubtedly, his growing greed is starting to make his face look physically more unpleasant, an aspect that we see finally in his elderly self, which is described right at the start of the novel, in which his fearsome visage is talked about for us. Dickens described how his face has become greedy and restless, but also that the master passion has started to take root. Now, this passion that's referred to is the passion for financial gain or for success in terms of money. The analogy comparing it to a tree is a good one, and it's very effective, because what it does is it helps the audience to appreciate the idea that this is something that is growing within him, the same way that a tree's roots grow, but also the idea that it is something that we cannot come back from, or something that is going to take a lot to remove from him. Of course, we understand the idea of tree roots becoming so entrenched and entwined into the earth and the soil that they cannot be ripped out, apart from with great force. Now, this is effective because this is precisely what has to happen to Scrooge. It takes a lot to finally change this from him, to make it so that he understands that financial gain is not the thing he must do. Rather, it is the nascent stage of his avarice at this point, which is beginning to really grow and then also take root, i.e. begin to stop him from ever turning back. It's consuming him and his character as a whole. We hear that he was not alone, but sat by the side of Belle. Now, this is the first time we hear of her, however, we can instantly understand that this was a woman that he was betrothed to, who they had made some sort of arrangement or some sort of understanding that they would one day be married. She is in a mourning dress, which is interesting because, of course, the implication is that somebody has died, as is the case when you are in mourning. A very common thing in the Victorian time to do was for someone to, especially the wife of the deceased, to wear black for an incredibly long time. Equally, she has tears in her eyes. However, what we come to appreciate is that she is not mourning a literal death, but rather a personal, if you like, or a figurative death. That is the death of their relationship, but also of the man Scrooge was. This shows how much he has changed already, and how she believes that there is absolutely no turning back. This is why she breaks off their engagement. It is significant that she is acting as though a death has occurred because it helps us understand that the Scrooge that was has died. Now, we can talk at length later about why it is that he quite literally dies a death, this young, naive, innocent man. But the fact is that either way, she feels that he is sufficiently gone, irreversibly gone, that she can declare death and move on as though she is grieving for the loss of a life, as opposed to just a type of person or the way that he was. She then creates a comparison that is something that is worth talking about in nearly any essay about A Christmas Carol. She talks about how an idol has displaced her. She has been replaced in his life by something else that is worthy of worship. This is the connotation of an idol. When he asks her what she means, to clarify, she talks about how it is a golden one. Now, this metaphor functions on many levels. Firstly, it shows that he is no longer devoted to her. An idol is something that is to be worshipped, as though religiously, and so therefore it is no longer her that serves this purpose or carries this function in his life. She correctly identifies that he now cares so strongly for something else that it means that she no longer has a place in his life. And of course, by talking about how it is a golden idol, she is talking about how it is financial wealth and the acquiring of money. However, by referring to herself, or rather as money, to money as an idol, she is reinforcing the religious connotation of this whole novel. The image of the golden idol links to the Ten Commandments and the command of God that we as Christians must not worship false gods or graven images. And so therefore, the fact that Scrooge is worshipping a golden idol proves not only that he no longer values Belle the way he should, but that he is deliberately turned away from God. He is worshipping and putting all of his faith and devotion into something other than the God Almighty. Now, this is all part of the attempt to set him up as not just somebody who is failing in his mortal life, but failing in his spiritual life, the covetous old sinner that we hear about in Stave 1. The verb worship implies that the zeal that he seeks money means that he cannot be following the teachings of Christ, and so therefore, as Marley warns him, his immortal soul is in as much danger as his mortal life of being laden and burdened with misery. Scrooge's attempt to defend himself is interesting because he talks about how he desires money so much because poverty is the worst thing that can befall someone in this time period. Now, of course, we know that he's right, but the irony is that he himself seems to have forgotten this as an older man. When he is shown the Cratchits and by the Ghost of Christmas Present, he is reminded that he said, "Oh, are there no prisons, are there no workhouses?" And he's then shown that the two greatest problems in society are want, which is poverty, and also ignorance. Now, the fact that he seems to have forgotten the fact that he once knew that poverty was something so despicable and so desperate to be avoided shows either that he is an arch hypocrite or reinforces the idea that ignorance is such a big issue. And he talks about the even-handed dealing of the world, implying some sort of immoral idea of judgment and fairness, which is that there is no arbiter of judgment and fairness, that the only way we can succeed is if we desperately achieve it for ourselves. And so it shows his increasing pessimism, but also the idea that he has singularly failed to live up to the teaching he once had, or the message he once knew about poverty and about how serious it is. However, as Stave 3 also progresses, he starts to realise that he's not right, especially by seeing the Cratchits and how happy they are. He learns that actually poverty is not the worst thing that can happen to somebody. It is what happens to him in some ways. Now, Belle comments that his nobler aspirations have fallen off one by one, and she recognises that Ebenezer was perhaps once a kind and generous young man. This is a side of him that we don't see as the reader, we just have to take her word for it. But the idea here, therefore, is that the comparison with gain is what has overtaken him. It's his obsession that has become so great that there is no room in his life anymore for any kindness or generosity. The capitalization of the word G shows that for him it is almost like a god, and so therefore echoes the idea of the golden idol, but it also connects it to the seven deadly sins, which is another tenet of Christianity, and so therefore just reinforces further what a sinner Ebenezer Scrooge is. When Belle finally gets around to breaking it off with Scrooge, so to speak, for ending their relationship, she uses language that is very fitting. She talks about how what they had was a contract. Now, it could be that what she is trying to do here is speak in terms that he can understand. She is showing that he is so driven and immersed in the world of finance and business that she can only talk in these terms, and so therefore he will not understand ideas of love, ideas of loyalty and trust, only that he will understand ideas of business. So that's why she says what they had was a contract that she is gently releasing him from. There is also a sense that she could be trying to twist the knife somewhat, to remind him that it is he who has created this situation. It is a criticism that she is making of him, that it is due to his view of what they had as a contract that actually is the reason it is ending. He says, as another means of defence, I was a boy then, as though suggesting that he didn't know what they were doing. But what she argues is that he has drifted apart from her. His pursuit of the wealth that he now so clearly craves has functioned to separate him from her. Of course, he cannot deal with this, he cannot understand this, and he cannot reconcile it, stating that it is in some way naive to rely on other people. He says that we must make ourselves financially viable in this world in order to escape poverty and to be strong. And this asserts his traumatic history. It asserts the lingering residual trauma of his childhood, where he was forced to be alone, where he was forced to survive on his own, and shows the level of scarring that has created for him. It affirms how emotionally stunted he has been by what took place in his youth, that he cannot fathom this relationship with Belle in any way as being healthy. And so therefore, because he cannot trust her, he cannot trust anyone other than himself. I hope you found this video helpful. Make sure to stay tuned for more videos and make sure you like and subscribe. Thank you.